Thank you, Mr. Terry McCarthy, President and CEO of the Los Angeles World Affairs Council, distinguished members of the Council, Dr. Krishna Kumar, Director of Labor and Population of RAND Corporation, Honorable Consul Generals, Diplomatic Corps in Los Angeles, distinguished members and supporters of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your warm welcome. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to visit Los Angeles again. I remember this is my 6th visit to Los Angeles, and I really like and love this city. I visit often California because California is a hub of global action, from commerce to culture to climate change. But I must confess that as a big fan of action movie, just looking at the Hollywood sign up in the hill, that really motivates me and makes me happy. There are many ways to call my job as the Secretary General of the United Nations. Mr. McCarthy said that some different way, but there are many different ways to describe the job. The most commonly known is most impossible job in the world, on the earth. That's what the first UN Secretary General, Trygve Lie, told his successor long time ago. Then Secretary General is abbreviated like SG. This is often called the scapegoat. If United States or Russia or China, all these big powers are not happy, all the things are dumped on the Secretary General. That's why I often become the topic of the news in the world. Then that's the way I sometimes become scapegoat while I've been working very hard. There are many other ways, but I will try to take some other time to introduce. I do not want to disappoint myself and disappoint yourself. I really want to maintain some prestige of my job. Ladies and gentlemen, I really thank the support of American people, citizens, and people of California and Los Angeles who have made tonight's gathering possible. I'm grateful to World Affairs Council of Los Angeles and RAND Corporation. RAND Corporation has been making a vital contribution through their very important researches. And I have fond memories of my visit to UCLA 6 years ago. Also, I want to take this opportunity to salute the leadership of Governor Jerry Brown and Mayor Eric Garcetti and so many other Californians who recognize the great value of the United Nations. Governor Brown is a passionate and committed person in working with the United Nations. I met him several times already in his office here, and also he joined the world leaders last December when there was a climate change summit meeting in Paris, where he helped a lot in helping climate change agreement adopted. We depend on citizens like you to promote international understanding and to help us build even closer ties between the United Nations and the United States. We are very much grateful to the United States. United States is by far, by any standard, the largest and biggest supporter and leader and champion of this world. When it comes to United Nations, you pay 22 to 28% of budget. you contribute many other developmental and humanitarian and human rights support. And you are the real leader of this world. And I count on United States such a continuing leadership and championing the values and principles of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, today, the main purpose of my meeting you today is to ask your engagement than ever before. Your continuing engagement and support for the United Nations is supporting the whole world's problems. This is a time of turbulence in world affairs. I'd like to talk to you tonight about how we can solve these seemingly impossible problems, intractable problems. I'm also here to defy our common humanity. This is also a decisive moment when we can set the world on a safer and a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, across the world, people worry about the next extreme storm, terrorist attacks, financial shock, or outbreak of deadly diseases, which we have experienced Ebola. Now, we are very much concerned about the Zika virus. There may be fewer wars between countries, but there is more insecurity. Inequality keeps growing. Women and girls in all societies continue to face discrimination, sometimes unseen but very visible discrimination. This is fact of our life. In too many places, military spending is far outpacing investment in people. Citizens are looking to their leaders for decisions, but too often they see deadlocked. The leaders are fighting among themselves. More than 125 million people around the world need daily humanitarian assistance. And among them, more than 60 million people have become refugees or internally displaced peoples. We call IDPs around the world. This is the most number of people since the end of Second World War. We have only seen this kind of a humanitarian crisis only during the time of Second World War. Then in this 21st century, where prosperity and well-being should be much more for the people, but there are still much more people who are suffering from all these troubles. These numbers are unsustainable. The human costs are intolerable. There is one big truth about the challenges we face. That means no country, no single country, or no international organization, however powerful and resourceful one may be, cannot do it alone. When we ask students, which is the strongest and most powerful, richest country in the world, easiest answer is United States. United States cannot do it alone. We need to have everybody's hands all together on deck. We need a global partnership and solidarity. We need to work together. In an interdependent world, there is no national security without global security. There is no prosperity on Main Street without vibrant economies everywhere. When it comes to protecting the natural environment, there is no my backyard or your backyard, but just our one and only planet Earth. Tackling these issues at the national level demands working effectively with the international community. That is the global logic of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, last week at the Jafari refugee camp in Jordan, I met a young Syrian girl. She was just a ninth grader. She told me, I asked her, what is your dream? What do you want to be? She said, I want to be an interpreter. That was quite a humble and simple dream. But from her face, I saw shining dream. We must help these young girls. We must help all these helpless young girls and boys who have been in the camps during the last 6 years. Jordan accommodates 650,000 refugees, Turkey 2.5 million, Lebanon 1 million. In Lebanon, when you go to Lebanon, 1 out of 3 people is either Syrians or Palestinian refugees. In Iraq, where the situation is very dire, they also host 255,000 Syrian refugees. Altogether, 4.8 million people have become refugees along the neighboring countries. And minimum 12 million people inside Syria, they need daily humanitarian assistance. This country has totally been destroyed. All the infrastructures, I think most 50-60% of infrastructures have been destroyed. In any way, I was very much deeply touched by this. By the way, these refugees held on to their dreams. Today, those dreams number in the millions. Half the world's refugees are children. About 30 million boys and girls whose lives have been put on hold, who have seen things which a child should never see, such kind of horrible things. As you may know, as was introduced by Ms. McCarthy, I myself was, when I was 6 years old, I was one of those displaced persons. At that time, I didn't know what the war was like, but only thing I knew was that my stomach was hungry. I was very hungry. And my grandparents, my parents were running here and there around the town to find something to feed their children. I was one of 6 children of my father and my mother. At that time, United Nations came. For us, United Nations was beacon of hope. The blue flag was our lifeline. They provided food, they provided clothing, and they provided textbooks. UNICEF, UNESCO, and all United Nations agencies helped the South Koreans. Otherwise, I would not be able to stand here as a Secretary General. Whenever I travel to developing countries, and I've been visiting refugee camps and schools, the facilities are very poor. But I've been telling them that the situation you are now experiencing is much better than I was. And I was you, and I'm here with you. And as United Nations was with me at that time, I will always be with you. Don't despair and have a strong hope. That has been my consistent message to them. Now, I've been urging world leaders, United States, and mostly Europeans, to show greater solidarity and compassion for humanity. When managed properly, accepting refugees may be a win for everyone. Refugees are famously devoted to education and self-reliance. They bring new skills and dynamism into aging societies and workforces. Attempts to demonize them are not only offensive, they are factually incorrect. I have been calling world leaders to counter fear-mongering with reassurance and to fight inaccurate information with the truth. Refugees have a right to asylum, no bias and no barbed wires. Ladies and gentlemen, today's refugee crisis and the large-scale migration of people in search of opportunity are signs of deeper challenge. From Syria to Afghanistan to South Sudan, we need to resolve the wars that force people to flee their homes. Diplomacy by the United Nations mediators and our partners is bringing some hope of progress in Syria. A cessation of hostilities has been largely holding over a month. And during this time, we've been trying to provide humanitarian assistance, life-saving assistance to many people who are living in besieged areas. We've been providing at least 800,000 people, and our target is to reach more than 1 million people by the end of this month. My special envoy on Syria, Mr. de Mistura, is now visiting Russia today. He held the first meeting between the Syrian parties. And of course, their positions are far apart. And we've been trying to extract as much as possible some commonalities between the two sides. Because they've been fighting 6 years, so they were speaking all different frequencies. There is nothing in common in their positions, but through their statement and letters, we've been trying to extract and expand the space, political space, to find some commonalities. This is what we are doing, and I'm sure that when this meeting will be held again the next week, I will be able to make much better progress. And there is strong commitment by the United States and Russia and other members of the International Syrian Support Group who are really engaged in this matter. We are really striving to improve the speed with which we deploy our peace operations, including peace negotiations. We are also working to end the scourge of abuses by international troops. Those who send to help people must never become their tormentors. The United Nations is also focusing on the deeper roots of conflict. Securing human rights for all, regardless of ethnicities, religion, sexual orientation, or other distinction, remains a core objective of the United Nations. We are pressing member states to address the underlying drivers of radicalization. We must avoid the trap of overreacting or further alienating of people we try to reach. That is why I'm going to convene the first ever World Humanitarian Summit meeting next month in Istanbul. That will be an opportunity to address some of the root causes of today's crisis and to improve our global responses. I have also tried to revitalize efforts to rid the world of nuclear weapons. The end of the Cold War did not mean an end to the nuclear threat. The risk of nuclear weapons remain pervasive. Non-state actors are known to be trying to gain access to nuclear and other materials for weapons of mass destruction. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea continues provocative acts such as the test of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles that violate Security Council resolutions. Nuclear powers are spending vast sums of money to modernize their arsenals, leaving other pressing needs like schools, healthcare, infrastructure underfunded. The best guarantee against a nuclear catastrophe is a world without nuclear weapons. There are no right hands for the wrong weapons. Last Thursday and Friday in Washington, D.C., President Obama has convened the fourth Nuclear Security Summit meeting. The main focus of this meeting was, rather than not on reducing the nuclear arsenals, but how we make sure that nuclear materials and nuclear weapons are given access to non-state actors like ISIL, Daesh, and all these terrorists and extremists. Leaders from 52 countries, they were very sincerely engaging in their discussions. And there was even a scenario-based exercise among the leaders. That just one question was given, that suppose from a certain country, Daesh has taken access and material, nuclear materials, deadly nuclear materials, then what will happen? How international community should handle this matter? That was a very good exercise among the leaders. Suppose this kind of thing happens, my worry and the concerns of world leaders is that, first of all, world people will be panicked and there will be lack of coordinations among the countries. Then just to reduce that kind of unwanted gaps among the world leaders, I think that was the main purpose. It was a very good exercise. And I really appreciate the leadership of President Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, in the broadest sense, our aim is to leave no one behind. Everybody, regardless of your gender, age, or ethnicity, whether you are coming from developed or developing world, everybody, 7 billion people, should get on board for sustainable path. This is the promise at the heart of 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, which was adopted by world leaders last year, September last year, including President Obama. It has 17 goals, what we call SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. It covers all spectrums of our life and including this planet Earth. It puts our people in the world and our planet Earth onto sustainable path so that everybody can live with peace, prosperity, and well-being. It is a 15-year blueprint to end global poverty, fight inequality, promote the rule of law, and build peaceful societies. Women's empowerment among them is a key thread running through the goals. The world will never be able to generate and achieve 100% potentiality when and if we do not use fully the potential of 50% of the world's population. They are women. Half the sky are women. As a Secretary General of the United Nations, I've been trying to act what I preach. It's not only you preach. When you preach, you have to act as you preach others. I've been trying to change landscape of gender empowerment of the United Nations. I have appointed, I think, most number of women as senior level positions. I think combining all 62 years before I came, the number of women at the senior level are far, far less than whom I have appointed. Now, I see almost 40 to 60% of gender empowerment. Around my table, I see many hardworking and proud women. We have one example is Undersecretary General Gayak, who is in charge of communication and public information. And there are many such people. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking a lot about climate change. And President Obama and this government has been leading this campaign with the United Nations. China also has been leading this campaign, and we were very happy and encouraged. After many decades of negotiations, the world leaders last December in Paris adopted a very ambitious Paris Agreement on climate change. The Sustainable Development Goals and climate change, they are meeting the first year this year. 2016 is the first year, beginning year. It's very important that we begin the first step well. The people say that however far it may be, you may have to go, when you have a good first step, that is something like you have done half of your journey. So I am very much committed. And that's why April 22nd of this month, I have invited world leaders to come to the United Nations to sign this Paris Agreement. And on that day, there will be another high-level meeting on Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm sure that as President Obama and President Xi Jinping of China announced last week in the White House that they will both sign and will lead this very important, ambitious climate change agreement process. Again, there's a 2030 agenda for sustainable development will help us prevent the conflict. And climate change will also help us to prevent conflict. Because the impact this climate change and impact and sufferings and frustrations of many people around the world because of abject poverty, because of a disease, because of conflict, then we cannot but see many burning fires, many frustrations which leads political instability in many parts around the world. A more sustainable world will be a safer world. Ladies and gentlemen, United Nations was born in the United States, here in California. The drafting of the charter more than 71 years ago, drew strength from California's strong global identity and from the core American values of equality and freedom. Today, the people of California and the United States will continue to play a vital role in realizing United Nations Charter's vision. Over the years, the United States has been one of the world's most generous contributors of humanitarian aid, a champion of human rights, and a leader in the fight against hunger. It continues to be the largest contributor to the United Nations regular and peacekeeping budget. And its example of strength in diversity continues to inspire the world. Diplomats of all nations recognize that the United Nations need strong and engaged leadership from the United States for our organization to work well and better. California, for its part, is a powerhouse of social progress and change. I'm encouraged by the very active UN associations here in Southern California and elsewhere in the state. The World Affairs Council in Los Angeles can also play a very important role. And Los Angeles is a global city. What you do here can inspire cities everywhere around the world. In that spirit, I ask you, each and every one of you, to take on a leadership role in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. And after all, the SDGs are universal, and they apply to all countries. Even the wealthiest countries have not conquered poverty. Even the most technologically advanced are not yet acting in full harmony with the environment. Even the oldest democracies still wrestle with racism and other forms of injustice. I therefore urge you to engage the storytellers and artists of your creative community to spread knowledge of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I ask you to stimulate the activism of local civil society to build support for the SDGs and also climate change. I encourage you to forge plans and partnerships across government, business, academia, philanthropy, and the grassroots in order to fully implement the SDGs and climate change right here in Los Angeles by the year 2030. And I appeal to you, ladies and gentlemen, to remain at the forefront of climate action. California's emission limits, advances in clean energy, and groundbreaking cap-and-trade programs have put you at the center of energy revolution. You are showing that what was said to be costly and almost impossible is actually the sensible and profitable way for the future. As the world grows ever more urban, solutions here in Los Angeles and across the great state can point the way towards a future of peace and dignity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our moral duty and for political leaders, political duty to make this world better for all. We face great challenges, but our capacity to solve them even is greater if we work hard and together, and if we build partnership and solidarity. I thank you for your leadership and engagement. Thank you very much. Please sit down.
We have time for a few questions. Alexander here has a microphone. If you put your hand up, and we'll try and go around to some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for coming and speaking to us. And thank you also for talking a little bit about the nuclear issue. I see at least two major nuclear issues. The first one you touched upon, proliferation, and the fact that there are lots of areas where nuclear weapons can maybe be developed from waste, whether it's medical waste or from many other abandoned facilities and so on. That's a very big problem, and I know the UN is working on it. And the other, of course, is the increasing discussion by some countries, including Pakistan, about the use of tactical nuclear weapons, which, of course, is a very dangerous thing. Can you please tell me what the UN can do about both of those problems more than what's already been done?
When we talk about nuclear, we always are very much fearful, because the nuclear, we only talk about nuclear weapons. These are deadly, most destructive weapons the human being has ever developed. That's why the nuclear weapons and nuclear materials must be under strict control within international disarmament and global disarmament framework. That is number one importance. At the same time, if we use nuclear energy or some nuclear technology, these can be used for the benefit of our life. But because of some deadly accident which we have seen in Chernobyl and most recently in Fukushima in Japan, I think there are very psychologically difficult understanding and perceptions. But what we are now talking at this time, much more seriously concerned is the number of countries who are trying to acquire nuclear technology is increasing, including North Korea. And it's encouraging and fortunate that the United States and other permanent members of the Security Council have been able to address Iranian nuclear issues. But you should know that, as I explained, and as was very deeply discussed at the White House last week, there is always a possibility and danger that these nuclear weapons and materials, if not weapons, materials can be obtained by terrorist groups. And this is what we have to do. Without solidarity, without close coordination among member states, it will not be possible. And there are many issues of nuclear waste which have become, again, very serious issues. Because of the length of half-life cycle of nuclear materials so long, it must be taken with absolute scientifically controlled measure. So nuclear waste should also be strictly controlled. Those things should not be again used by any other potentially bad guys like terrorists. So that's United Nations is very much focusing on that. Even at this time, I have convened this nuclear disarmament commission members. I have appointed about 30 disarmament experts around the world, and we regularly meet with them. And there are other international organizations and agencies who are dealing with this matter. But when it comes to non-proliferation and disarmament, there is a lot of political calculations and positions which really makes very difficult in negotiation. But that's what United Nations, as a universal, legitimate organization of the world, we are doing our best now.
Your Excellency, you mentioned some global challenges such as, racism and climate change. But with this upcoming presidential election in the United States, we've been seeing some of these challenges locally: racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia. So how do you think the upcoming elections and the outcome will affect the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN?
The climate change issues or sustainable development goals, they are not the political issues. This is something which all human beings, whole international community should do together. There is no single country which are immune from impact of climate change, or as I said, however rich country may be, there are problem of poverty and disease, and there are a lot of difficult things, unsustainable things. Therefore, these are not political issues. This is something which really affects humanity and human being and this world. The climate change is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, one of 17 goals. But if we do not handle and implement this climate change agreement properly, then whole this 16 goals may seriously be hampered in implementation. That is why the United Nations international community had two tracks of negotiation. The Sustainable Development Negotiation. They agreed to 17 goals, but they discussed 16 goals. And climate change has had separate negotiating track during the last at least 3 decades. So that's why we have these two goals. These are for humanity, these are for our Mother Nature. So we have to do all regardless of a political consideration. There is no political consideration, and I'm encouraged that even these days, climate skeptics have lost their places at this time. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for coming out here. I think we're all very privileged to have you address the World Affairs Council, so thank you. And a few years ago, you mentioned that there's a bias at the United Nations against the State of Israel, and that you were working to address that. What can be done at the United Nations and at your level to address those issues so that Israel can have its due presence in the world of nations?
I'd like to make it clear that United Nations does not have bias against Israel. Israel is one of the member states of the United Nations, and they have declared and committed that they will abide by all these principles and obligations of the United Nations Charter. Then why then there is a perception that Israel is now being treated differently not by the United Nations, by certain member states. This is individual countries. And then we have 193 member states. United Nations does not treat differently Israel, same as other member states. But when a group of those countries who have a difference of positions on the matters or policies on what Israel is doing, I think that has been giving some perceptions that United Nations as a whole is hostile or not friendly vis-a-vis Israel. Since I became Secretary General, I've been trying to, if not completely rectify, try to improve that kind of perception. Israel is now belonging to a regional group, and Israel also sometimes takes chairmanship of a certain groups, which have never happened in the past. But what is most important at this time, that Israel and Palestinians, they should sit down together and to achieve this Middle East peace process, make good progress in Middle East process. I understand that there are many issues have been identified. They know that what are the problems, what are the issues to be resolved. They are on the table. I've been speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his predecessors and Palestinian leaders. Just why don't you sit down together and discuss? If you have a difference of views, just leave them aside, and whatever you can agree upon, then try to consolidate and build upon this agreement. That's the best way to make a peace process going on, rather than you wait until everything is agreed. It will take much longer time than expected. That's what I'm very much concerned. I met last week President Abbas of Palestine, and I may have an opportunity of, I've been speaking all the times with Israeli leaders, and I told them that I'll try to visit again the region soon and engage myself and do whatever I can do to help promote this Middle East peace process. I thank you very much. Thank you.
We have time for We have time for one more question.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. My name is Khairuddin. I am an Iraqi refugee. And my question is going to be about Mosul, which is, we know it's under the Islamic State control. What is the position of the United Nations towards the Popular Mobilization Force, which is basically mostly the Shia fighter who are fighting the Islamic State? They have liberated many cities in Iraq, and I would like to know your opinion about their involvement in the liberation of Mosul, which started in 24th of March. What is the United Nations stand on the Popular Mobilization Force and Iraqi security forces? Thank you.
Again, there are many in this world, particularly when you are talking about your region, many differences of views. I have been meeting with so many world leaders, and particularly in the Middle East. Sometimes Islam is misunderstood and misperceived. There should be no reason why Islam should be interpreted differently or wrongly. That's because of lack of understanding. That's why United Nations has been really trying to promote better understandings of one's belief and one's religions. When your religion, your belief is important, then you should respect the other's belief and others' religion and others' culture and traditions. When there is a lack of such things, there naturally some dispute happens, and dispute sometimes, if it continues, then it may develop into a conflict, some violent conflict, a war. That's what we have to really guard against. We have to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, we have that kind of a situation happening elsewhere. United Nations has initiated the Alliance of Civilization, and through this, we really want to promote the mutual understanding and harmony and respect for one's tradition and culture and religion and belief. That's what the United Nations will have to continue, but we need your support, your practice, and respect others. I think that may be easy, but sometimes I do not understand why it is so difficult. When you begin from your neighbor, just respect your neighbor, wherever one may have come, and then I think this can expand all throughout your community, all throughout your country, all the region, and worldwide. That's what we have to practice every day. My answer is general. But I don't want to go anything specific because there are so many difficult issues on this. I thank you very much. Okay.